Erica writes that she's been trying to bring a more of a dominant-submissive dynamic with her boyfriend. The block for her is that she has a difficult time seeing her boyfriend as a dominant. This comes primarily from her inability to respect how he deals with difficult decisions and moments in life. She writes that when things get difficult, her boyfriend gets overwhelmed, and it's usually her that needs to calm him down in these situations.
It's really tough. The reality is that how you enact in the bedroom, how you want to enact in the bedroom, if it's going to be psychologically true, it can't be a complete fantasy. You can't say, oh, I'm going to submit to this super powerful man who has everything together, when you know that he can't handle stressful situations whenever they pop up. You can suspend your disbelief for a time, but less so in a relationship or long-term dynamic or long-term marriage or any of those scenarios. After a while, your suspension of disbelief starts to wear away. If you're doing it for one night, you can ignore a lot of things.
Yeah.
The reality of it matters less. But if you're in a long-term relationship where you want a dom-sub dynamic, there has to be some significant reality underlying the truth of that dynamic, and he's falling short here.
I'm just going to piggyback off what you said, that if you do it for a night, then you could overlook many things. But I would say the reason it might work with a complete stranger is you don't know the stranger well enough to know if they're worthy of your respect or not. You could tell yourself that, yeah, maybe this guy really he can wrestle lions and he's part of the mafia or whatever it is. But if she actually knows this guy, this is her boyfriend, she knows him well enough to know that, at least from her own moral decision-making perspective, he is not worthy of her respect. And that is, I think, the core of the problem. You cannot fake respecting somebody. You can't pretend to respect someone if you don't actually respect them. That's the core of the problem.
Totally. So
I wonder if you can talk about like the importance of respect. I mean, this is such a trivial sounding word, but it's so core to BDSM in a dominant-submissive way. It just doesn't work if the submissive doesn't respect the dominant, and it has nothing to do with whips and chains and how good his slapping technique is. None of that matters.
It really is very deep to the core. I think respect is an interesting notion. I spend a very long, detailed chapter in Volume 2 called The Architecture of Intimacy, available for pre-order on Amazon, upcoming, be released in the next 3 weeks, but a very long chapter on respect and defining it, creating it. One of the definitions I offer, actually before I go into the definition, one of the oddities of respect is that unlike almost any other emotion, we speak of respect as a debt. You owe them your respect. You are obligated to respect this. So there's a normative force to the notion of respect that is odd among emotions. We also speak of respect not only towards persons. We speak of respect, you need to respect nature. You need to respect the ocean. You need to respect that gun. You need to respect these things that have power, that have force. And the definition that I offer is that respect is the emotional recognition or acknowledgement of bigness. Is that this thing is bigger than you in some way, and you therefore owe it your respect. Often that bigness is in terms of power, but we also speak of respect in terms of morality. If you see someone, they may not be powerful per se, but they have a really strong moral center, that will trigger our respect. They're not more powerful than you, but their values are stronger than yours, or they adhere to them more principally than you do.
They represent something larger than themselves, perhaps. That's where the bigness comes from, perhaps. They're embodying a higher principle.
Or at least fundamentally large. I think I make the case that respect is very different for men and women for a variety of reasons, which we don't have to go in here. But one of the ultimate outgrowths of respect, because it is owed, it is something that you must give once you have selected a set of values. If I value moral behavior, then someone who demonstrates a very high level of it, I don't get to choose whether to respect them or not. I have to, because I have this value. If I value strength, then if I meet someone who's really strong, I owe them my respect, because once I've chosen the value, and often our biology chooses our values for us, in at least in a sexual way. And so we often don't get those choices if I value intellect, if I value whatever. So one of the interesting outgrowths of this is, how do we express respect? What is the outward manifestation of the internal emotional state of respect? How do I demonstrate that I am fulfilling my obligation of respect? And that is through deference. Deference is the core manifestation. If I really respect somebody's intelligence, then when they speak, I'm going to shut up and listen. I'm going to defer my right to speak to theirs because I value their input, I value their opinion, I value their knowledge on a topic, I value. If someone stronger than me pushes past me, I'm going to be like, yep, you can go, dude, you got the right of way, because I respect their size, their strength, their capacity for violence, whatever that is. So yielding, deferring is the outward manifestation of respect, and it's not a far step from there to obedience and acceptance and submission, right? It's, in fact, a very important prerequisite for making that step to submission. And if you are trying to submit, you're trying to obey, forcing your psyche to follow the lead of someone that you would not naturally defer to, you're going to create an intense conflict, which is a lot of what she's expressing here, is that I'm forcing myself in the bedroom to be obedient and submissive, but I'm well aware that in general I would not defer to his decision-making or his lead.
Very difficult to reconcile the two, if not impossible. There's a little bit more to be said here about the center of conflict. What is it about him that she can't respect? Right now, if he had body odor or something, but it's the fact that he can't deal with difficult decisions and moments in life. Me and you have talked offline quite a bit about trying to decide on our values. How do we orient ourselves in the world? What is the normative order? What is the good that we're trying to achieve in the world? And I told you some number of months ago, if not a year or two ago, that one of the ideas that's settling in my head is the notion of what does it mean to be a man, or to be manly, or to have masculine traits. If I want to embody being a masculine man, what does that mean? There's an Andrew Tate definition to that, of course. There's a Jordan Peterson definition to that. There's multiple definitions over the ages. One of which, however,
definition, which is my preference for anyone who wants to look it up.
No, but one of which is when life does get difficult, when you have difficult decisions, difficult moments, it is the man who, at least this is I'm not saying all men should be this, I'm saying this is what I expect of myself. Like if I fall short, if I break down in a difficult situation or a crisis, I would go back and reflect on that. I'm like, I wish I could have done better. Like that would be my normative instinct, is to be better in a crisis, to be the strong person in the room when shit is going down. That is my North Star. Now, do I achieve that every time? Perhaps not, but when I don't, then that's work that I need to do on myself. And it's telling that she herself is hinting at what I have settled on as a very masculine trait to embody. And this is not really philosophically defensible. I can't tell you, based from Aristotelian ethics, you can work your way up to this version of masculinity. No, to some extent, there's an arbitrariness. I don't know if it just digs into a deep archetype of what it means to be a man, and this is just part of typical knowledge that I'm reaching into, or what it is. But I will say that when I demand of myself the ability to be able to deal with difficult situations, that has a sense of a normative order. It has a sense of, that there is a shouldness there to that view that doesn't further require, for myself at least, any further explanation. Like I'm settled in that idea. I'm like, that feels right. A man should be the calm voice in the room, the person who's able to handle a tough situation. That feels right to me. I make no defense beyond that statement. It just feels right to me. And it's a larger question about what is it and how do you think about what do you put in the bucket of masculine traits, and how do you think about the shouldness of masculine traits? I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
Totally. You touched on, I think, again, this is a very volume 2 conversation because I construct the underlying rationale for those emotional experiences. So I loved what you said in terms of I may fall short, but I would judge myself in that regard. A big part of that experience for a woman, seeing you do that, is the creation of trustworthiness, because you are adherent to a code even when you fall short. Meaning, if you fall short of being the calm voice in the room, you don't say, well, in that situation, anyone would fall short. You don't say, oh, well, it was such a tough situation. I mean, I just couldn't help myself. I got worked up. You don't lower the standard of the code. You hold yourself accountable for falling short and move to grow, to move toward that ideal. And the upholding of an ideal is absolutely crucial for a woman to trust you, because she otherwise doesn't know how to predict what you're going to do, right? Like, or what you're even aiming to do. What is even the intention behind what you're going for? She doesn't know. It's very difficult then to submit, to trust, to engage with you, because you might do anything, right? Within that context, failing too often, the incompetence at aiming for the code becomes a huge issue. So you can fail every now and then. I think everybody recognizes the humanity of that. But if you're failing all the time, then you're just a fuck up, no matter how much you speak of your code. And so that also is not trustworthy. And I would argue, and I do argue in the book, that trust is the prerequisite for respect. That you need someone who you fundamentally are able to trust in order to build that respect in a sexual sense. That's not true broadly, but it is true in a sexual dom-sub kind of engagement. One of the core concepts of submission, of following someone's lead, of leadership in general, actually, is, hey, I'm taking my hands off the wheel. I'm going to go along with your lead. I'm deferring to your decisions. Well, I have to trust that you're going to make good decisions, that you're going to follow through on the decisions that you say you're going to make, and you have to be competent and capable of making decisions. You have to be willing to do that, and then you have to be good at it. And that's a significant burden on some level, but competence is really important for trust. If you're just incompetent at life, well, then how can I trust you with my safety and well-being? How can I take my hands off the wheel if I know that you tend to fuck things up or get overwhelmed, which is just a form, and this is harsh, but on some level, getting overwhelmed is a form of fucking up. It's, hey, the situation is here and I'm not adequate to meet the situation. I'm not up to the task. My emotions take precedence over my handling of the situation. Well, yeah, it's going to be very hard for someone else to be like, cool, I'm going to totally follow your lead. I'm going to trust you when I've seen you repeatedly, constantly fall over. It's the pattern here that's the problem. It's not one episode. I think often in these conversations with her boyfriend, she probably falls into situations where he's making an excuse for a single episode, and she's trying to say, no, it's the pattern here. It's not one time. It's a lot of times. And I don't know how to follow this lead. If you enjoyed our discussion, you can explore these topics in greater depth in the books of the Sex Like LSD series. Links are in the description below for Love is a Kink, The Architecture of Intimacy, and Structuring Desire, along with the associated workbooks.